And here we have a reflected optical wavefront. We have a little BB up here. We'll call it a BB. I'm not sure what that is. But you can see how uncomplicated that wavefront is that's coming off of that BB. It's just a very uncomplicated wavefront that's being reflected by the laser light. However, if we take something like a chess piece, you can see the complex nature of the optical wavefront that's coming off of the chess piece compared to the BB. And then we have what's called the interference of coherent light. Coherent light is interesting because it has the ability to actually cancel itself out. You can take two separate beams of light, have them hit one another, and have total darkness. They'll cancel each other out. And the way that that happens, if I would sit this down here for a second, is if you had one wave coming in where the wave is at its crest, and another wave that's coming in and the wave is at its crest, you have an increase in the amplitude of the wave. Now, if you have a wave coming in and it's at its trough, and a wave that's coming in that's at its crest, you have a cancellation of that wave. So that's where you get black. You get nothing recorded at all. And that happens millions upon millions of times throughout the volume of space of that emulsion that's being recorded. Oh, here we go. So this is exactly what it is that you're seeing when you look at a hologram. This would be without any object whatsoever, the two optical wavefronts coming in together and merging with one another. This is the interference pattern that would take place. It's called a fringe pattern. Light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. Now the fringe pattern for the BB, that very simple wavefront, would create this type of interference pattern. The chess piece that I showed you with the very complex optical wavefront coming in would create this type of a pattern. But that's what's on the hologram. There's no picture there. There's no object there. What you see isn't there. What's there is this. And that's what's reconstructed, because you'll see that there are lights that come in to light up the holograms. And when those lights hit this, what the hologram does is it's going to send that light back out to you, but it's going to modulate it according to this pattern. And in that pattern is all the information of the original object as it was recorded. Now these biblical artifacts, some of them are very complex. We have the Antioch chalice over there, which is in the collection of the Metropolitan Museum of New York. And it was formerly owned by the Rockefellers. They had it in their possession and family, and then they donated it to the Met. But you can see how complex all the detail is and how much it's held. And keep in mind that you're looking at 10,000, listen to 10,000 lines per millimeter of resolution. You can take a holographic object and put it under a scanning electron microscope and go in and actually see surface bacteria. That's how much information is recorded. That is wow. Okay, so let's make a hologram quickly. This is down in the lab. I'm using a skull. People will ask me, well, why do you use a skull? And you know, back when I did these pictures, this was very early on. I keep reusing things and throwing other things off. But this piece right here was one of the first PowerPoints I ever did. So it goes back a long time, maybe to 96 or something. Office 96, if anybody remembers that. Yeah. So the reason why I had a skull was the project was British Revolutionary War soldier. In Philadelphia, they were tearing down a post office and rehabbing it, and they found a skeleton in the basement. And it turned out the skeleton, they thought it was a crime-related hit from a long time ago, but it was actually a British Revolutionary War soldier. And they figured out, you know, because of the buttons and everything, they gave him a military parade down to Philadelphia International Airport and then flew his remains back to England, because the treaties that we have with other countries, when that happens over here, the person has to go back and have a military burial in England. So that's what they were doing. But that was a big archaeological find for Philadelphia for the Revolutionary War. And the University of Pennsylvania Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology wanted to have the skeletal remains. So they figured, how are we going to do this? And they said, well, let's do holograms. So they brought his skeleton up to my house. I had my lab in my house, and I worked with his skeletal remains and did the holograms. Then they put the holograms on display at the University Museum. So that's how that worked. But that's just a model of a skull. And we see skulls everywhere. What is it with skulls anymore? I mean, everything's skulls. The oddest, prettiest things. You'll see something really pretty and beautiful, and all of a sudden there's like a skull with it. I don't understand what the thing is with the skulls. But anyway, that's why I have it here. And this is our equipment that's set up. Let's go through it quickly. That's misspelled. That should be film holder, not flim holder. Okay. Okay, so there's our laser beam traveling down the table. Okay, so we have the laser beam traveling down the table. And that's our object beam. That goes directly to the object. And that's our reference beam, which goes directly to the plate. Now, these two things are going to interfere with one another. The light that's coming off of the skull and the light that's untouched that's going in as the reference beam. And there we have a setup there. And we take the narrow beam and we spread it out so that it covers the thing. Now, these holograms are all done the same way. Whether it was the Antioch chalice, and there's also a 1st century Christian clay jar over there that you might be interested in seeing too, because you'll notice it has 2 fish on it and a cross, which is really interesting, from the 1st century. Now, why would they be doing that if there was no Jesus Christ? Just for fun in the 1st century? I don't think so. And there's the skull lit up, and then that's the hologram of the skull after it's finished. Now, a lot of school students can do this. I don't want to make it sound like it's very difficult. If you have high school age students, you can make holograms now. And of course, here are the applications: advertising, commercial, defense, education, fine art, historical archives, and scientific and technical.